No, because you're saying, listen, the context. I live in a feminist context, and I don't think religion is so powerful in forming the roles in my house. What I'm saying is tradition and religion do have an effect, and everybody around me is actually trying to make their path between what I said, being a feminist, understanding that women and men are not different, they are different.
One of my overriding images of being with my mum and my dad was having special time. Special time was part of the family vocabulary, where I'd go upstairs with my mum or my dad and we'd have kind of a story, or maybe we'd just talk about the day. Importantly, not dissimilar from your family now, that we were a lot. We were 3 kids growing up. We also had 2 half-sisters, so there were kind of 5 of us all together. And having that alone time with one parent and another, I think, was important. Shalom, welcome back to Really Jewish. This is feeling more Jewish by the day. Welcome to our conversation about what it is to be really Jewish. If you're back for another listen, welcome. If you're here for the first time, Bruchim Aba'im. This week, it's Yair Eldan and Oliver Joseph back to talk about what's really Jewish. This week, we're talking about parenting, specifically being dads. We are both fathers of some young and some older children. And what better a topic to talk about on our podcast, Really Jewish. This Really Jewish podcast is all about tackling big topics in the Jewish world and talking about them from a perspective of what is Jewish about them, and also specifically getting to a deepening place about how we personally reflect on those matters. Yair, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, Oliver. I'm fine, thank you. You know, Israel is in a very uncertain situation, so we are not relaxed, but I have to admit I am enjoying the fact that there's a stop in the war, even if it's temporary. I don't know. Hopefully not.
So, Yair, what does it mean to be a dad in 2026?
I'm a dad for the last actually 26 years. My first child was born in November 2000, and my little one was born in 2021. So I have a real gap and 6 children. I'm a very, how would I say, experienced dad. But when I think about my fatherhood, I have to admit, the scene that comes to my mind is actually me coming into the apartment that I rented. Actually, it was an apartment of my family. It was the first apartment after the separation of me and my first wife. And she and I think we were relieved. You know, because of the separation, everything was very, very sharp. But I remember my feeling, the chaotic feeling of going into the apartment and understanding that it's me. I, as a father, have to make a home to my 3 kids when they're with me. We had a joint custody. And the first thing I actually thought about, and actually it was materialized, was my mom. And I asked her to help me, and she was, she was there for me. And in a way, I remember these months after the separation, she taught me, and by showing me how to do it in a way by myself. And it always makes me think about fatherhood and about the connection between my fatherhood to the way my mom was with me when I was a child. And she took care of me, and actually she still in a way takes care of me, and I'm 53. It's not the same, obviously. There was a shift in the balance, but still, there is something about Jewish moms and mothers, universally, but especially Jewish moms, that is all about taking care of the child as a, 100% fully committed. And I got it from my mom. But I would want to talk about also about the change that happened to me. But I have to admit that in the moment of crisis, it was my mom and the way she did it, that actually generated my fatherhood.
So interesting.
How is it with you, Oliver? When did you become a dad?
So I became a dad 20 years after you, 2019, and it was during COVID. So it was a wild thing. Our daughter was born. I remember this very clearly, and it's become shel minhag. We say in the Jewish tradition, like a kind of a tradition which is now we keep. We have a simcha, like a family gathering on the occasion of our kids being born, and we had probably maybe 100, maybe 120, just family and friends. But there's lots of them, close family and friends. And we were crammed like elbow to elbow into our house for Simchat Bat, for a celebration of arrival of our first daughter. And then I think like 4 days later, it was the first COVID lockdown in London. But for me, listen, that's an interesting way to start parenting, because it's, and in many ways, that has been our parenting, because it's a moment of such intensity. Listen, surrounded by friends and family, but the aspect of that insularity that COVID gave us, where we spent, the best part of a year, maybe even more, just by ourselves, is a little bit of how we then came to parent. Now, I was working as a rabbi in a big shul at the time, a big synagogue, and in a time when the world could really have encroached on our family life and on our raising kids, we got to spend a lot of time by ourselves. Please don't get me wrong, there's no rose tinting of this image. It was also very, very difficult, and there were quite excruciating moments of being separated from family, from close family. But we did learn to have real time alone, like Friday night dinners by ourselves, often, which we still keep. Shabbatot, still broadly in the cocoon of family life. Now we live pretty sociable lives as parents to a degree, but there's always some of that space just for us and the kids. I can also speak about my own upbringing. One of my overriding images of being with my mum and my dad was having special time. Special time was just like part of the family vocabulary, where I'd go upstairs with my mum or my dad, and we'd have kind of a story, or maybe we'd just talk about the day or whatever. Importantly, not dissimilar from your family now, that we were a lot. We were 3 kids growing up. We also had 2 half sisters, so there were kind of 5 of us all together. And having that alone time with one parent and another, I think, was really, really important. And both Natalie and I try and achieve that with our kids now. I'm a dad of 3 now, and I think we both see the importance of having some time, how much the kids depend on that time where they just get to sit with one of us by ourselves.
I totally identify. I think one of the challenges as a parent, it's not connected to my fatherhood as a parent, is to actually make the balance between being with my kids and giving attention to one of them, which is a necessity for a child to have a time alone with one of his parents. I think it's a very, very important thing, but also to have family time, which is also very important for the whole family. But I'm wondering, how does your house, how do you function in the house? Is it like a Masorti traditional functioning where you go to work and Natalie does the housekeeping, or obviously not, as you left? Of course not. For me, I'm a boomer. It's not true.
I think, this is part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this topic, because I think a part of the generation that we live in is that there's no rules. That even in the most frum households that I know of, and we have in our lives in London, we have a real spectrum of very, very like religious friends, like frum traditional friends, and very secular friends, and people not from the Jewish community. There's no rules. There's no rules about what each of those families do according to where they are on the religious spectrum or whatever. In the broad sense, I would say men do a lot more. My dad is, thank God, really a wonderful father, and I think he was around for us a lot. But he came home at the end of a long day's work and didn't get involved in the house so much from memory. I think he did stuff, but he wasn't the carer of the house. In the context of how I parent, we definitely have a split. There are things that I don't look after in the house. I'm terrible at getting the kids dressed. It's not like I can't get them dressed, but Natalie has an opinion on how the kids should be dressed. Okay, fine. So part of being in a relationship is also surrendering parts. You're like, okay, so that's the bit that you care about and want to take care of. But like the great I was moaning to you before about being very busy at work at the moment. It's a common thing that I moan about when we're talking about finding balance. But one of the wonderful things about the work that I do right now is that at least 4 days a week, if not 5 days a week of working days, I'm able to be at home at 5 o'clock or before, either to prepare dinner or to eat dinner with my kids. I don't know many men or any people are able to achieve that. That's a great blessing of my work in particular. And I do pick up and drop off. I'm not, I don't think I'm the perfect parent, but both in the confines of the work that I do, I have the possibility to be around. And I also think in all of the families that I know, at least in London, there is just a natural expectation of more sharing in the house, particularly around parental responsibility, which I think is a good thing, but it makes the conversation very complicated, particularly about men's roles in the house, because there isn't really a formula for how men are supposed to parent. And maybe this is a good beginning of a conversation.
Right. I think, I just last night we sat on the terrace here in our Jerusalemite flat, and my wife told me about this Bedouin mother, woman, academic that is studying with her. She's studying to be a educational counselor, and it's a master's degree here in Israel. This Bedouin, she's she comes from a very religious and very traditional family, obviously, in Tel Sheva, near Beersheba, and she dresses in a very traditional way, covering her whole face. Not the face, but everything else. But at the same time, she's a very feminist woman. She's a very strong woman. And I'm saying that because, in a way, what you said about there are no rules, it's not only that there are no rules in our world, it's also the connection with, especially in a traditional place like Israel, the Middle East, in your actually traditional community, in environment that you live in, especially there, the rules are even blur. It's very confusing, because if you ask me about, the connection between parenting and Jewishness, I would say that the challenges to a religious society, a religious family, are even higher. The challenges are even greater. Why? Because religion is traditional. Religion is patriarchal. Religion gives men more credit. Why? Because religion is slower in reacting to the changes of reality. I live in a place, just you're talking about COVID. There were researches in Israel during COVID that came to the conclusion that women worked in the house during COVID far more than men, even in more egalitarian families. It's like when you're stuck at home, the women took more on themselves than in every day even. Interesting enough. So the challenges are even, and it connects to what I felt when I was a kid, that I grew up in a family. My father never washed dishes. Until this day, he washes only the dishes he actually eats from as a gesture. He does 1,000 different. I don't have complaints about his fatherhood. I came to an age where you don't blame the parents anymore, but you understand them. But still, and he was a good father. He gave me security. A lot of things I can say that I got from my father. My father is a good figure as a father for me, with all the problems that were occurring in our house when I was a kid, in every house for a person who grew up in the 70s and 80s of last century. But so what I'm saying is I'm sounding apologetic. Oh my God.
Last century.
Last century.
Tell us, that's what's really Jewish about parenting, because I think you listen. I disagree with you on the subtext. I don't think Judaism necessarily needs to be patriarchal to the degree to which you describe, but there is an argument here in terms of what continuity of religious life looks like without the patriarchy. There is a question, but take us to a little bit of the text that you prepared, because you were responsible for this week for bringing us a source or two, and tell us what's really Jewish about parenting, or in particular being a father.
Listen, without being apologetic, you can say fairly, surely, that when you're talking about religions and ancient texts, the ancient text reflects priority of men to women. In Judaism, we have the Mishnah in Orayot, who says the man precedes the women when there is uncertainty with regard to which of them to rescue or to return a lost item. There is a clear-cut priority for men. Why? Because men are more centered to religious life. They are the center of Jewish. They were the center of Jewish life, and obviously it reflects on and the women obviously in that world were confined to doing the housework, taking care of the kids, taking care of the husband, and it reflects in the fact that this text that says that a woman is not, she is supposed to respect her parents as a man, and she is supposed to take care of the parents and do everything. But if she's married, she's relieved from it because she has to take care of her husband. Or a woman is not supposed to, or she's not committed to do mitzvot aseh she'azman geraman. Yeah, a positive time cost.
Time-bound mitzvot, yeah.
Yeah, so she's not supposed to do it, and most of the commentary says that she's not supposed to do it in order to, give her time to take care of the house. Or maybe some apologetic, views say women are more spiritual than men, so they don't need these mitzvahs, they don't need these laws. But for me, what it means, what comes out of all this is the fact that, if for Freud, women are, the relationship between the kid and the mother is the most important, basic, influential for the future of the kid. Yeah, there is some kind of, he puts everything there on this relationship, and especially the first years. I would say in Jewish tradition, Oliver, and I wonder what you say about it. In Jewish tradition, it actually gets amplified. It's a burst of it because women are in functions, talking about the tradition, not the way it was evolving and you want it to evolve. The challenges in a Jewish family is even.
What do you mean by even greater? What do you mean the challenges are even greater?
I would ask a question like this. Do you think that you being Jewish and being raised in a Jewish family and raising your Jewish family is actually making you the tasks, the feeling that you are a good father, that there's connection between you and Natalie over the functions of you as a father and her as a mother is actually easier, or is it harder, or it doesn't affect you at all?
Because of Jewish life.
Exactly, yeah.
Listen,
and the way you grew up, yeah.
I disagree with you because I live in a world that's very feminist, and I also live in a world that's very Jewish, but it's complex. My family on Natalie's side are much more kind of traditional in supporting the male role in the household. When we sit down for festive meals, the tradition is always broken, but often in their family, certainly with their grandfather, the women would always serve the men at the table. I think it's absurd, but it exists, and it exists in a corner of certainly Jewish culture and other communities as well. But the core aspect here is about context. The context you're describing of the rabbinic codes is a context where there was a clear patriarchy. And that was because, for lots of reasons, because men were the primary bread earners, because men were the soldiers, because they defended the household with strength and with their presence. And perhaps the man was rescued first in the context of Mishnah Harayot that you said, because of that protective presence and of being the person who brought income to the home. But the question today is that contextual anthropological reality relevant to today? And you can make the argument in both directions, because I sit somewhere in the middle ultimately. But I believe in male strength. I think that's, in the manosphere and in some of the more kind of extremist versions of it. There is a reclaiming of that space of men needing to have strength and men needing to have a strong role in the household. That's not my politics, but I also want one of our kids is a boy. I want him to have a sense of his own strength. He already does because he's a little kid who's got a lot of strength, hormones coursing through his body. But you should have a sense of that strength and a sense of the responsibility that comes with that strength of, in part, looking after the people around you. But there's a flip of that, which is a real complexity. If we go to a more egalitarian home that we live in, for example, I want to wake up as a religious person, and I have something that I've taken more seriously in the last months, of every single morning trying to put tefillin on, trying to say some prayers, trying to say the Shema and the Amidah, the core prayers of Jewish life. And like this morning, there's loads of stuff that happened in our household. It's not an unusual morning, but it was a particularly busy morning. I didn't get time because there was too much stuff going on. So if you take responsibility as a man also in an equal way for waking up in the morning on a very simple level, then getting to synagogue or even just putting on tefillin for 5 or 10 minutes becomes very, very complicated. And that's exactly the aspect of mitzvah shazman grama, this aspect of broadly understood halachic Jewish legal consideration that a woman is not responsible for fulfilling a mitzvah that is affected by time, like saying the Shema in the morning, becomes very complicated because there isn't a clear rule book. There's definitely people who have written about it, but there isn't a clear rule book in 2025 and clear traditions inside each and every family about how you might make aspects of practice more egalitarian whilst equalizing the roles in the house. It gets really complicated. But I'm interested in that experiment. I'm interested in seeing my kids hearing the Shema in the morning and seeing me put tefillin on. And I'm also interested in them seeing me feed them breakfast or like prepare dinner or lunch or whatever it is, and having a role in the household, which is also significant. But it's complicated.
It is complicated. By the way, my morning was actually, maybe we had the same morning this morning, because I woke up. My wife woke up late. I took care of the kids, the meals to school. The meal for my wife was prepared by me this morning. So we have, I think, and obviously this moment where you wake up and you don't have 1 second to breathe, and the rain of questions and requests and comments from the kids around you, it just blasts into your head. But I have to admit, I disagree with you. I think the context is actually the opposite. I live in a country which is very complicated. On the one hand, women here do everything, and women here are, in general, are strong and independent and everything. But on the other hand, we just had a press meeting of people who serve in tanks in the army, who says, and religious people who says, they won't serve in the army if they will have to serve with women in the tank. As if women is kind of serving with a woman is kind of a threat to their consciousness, to their morality, as if women are a threat. And they don't understand. I think, that's what I'm saying. There's a deep connection between this and the roles and being a mother and a father. Because, I asked my wife about this Bedouin, and I asked her, listen, how can she walk with a dress that is actually being ordered by men and be a feminist? How could she actually be in both worlds? And she said, she actually addressed it and said, I don't want to disconnect from my traditional religious world. So I understand that there is a sense of me being, when I dress like that, me being some kind of a threat to men, and it actually objectifies me in a way. But at the same time, I don't want to disconnect from my traditional society, community. So I just walk between the lines, and I try to just manage. And I think I agree that the rules are blurred. But there is a deep connection between religion, Jewish religion and tradition as well, to fatherhood and motherhood and their conceptions and actually practices in everyday life. I see it all around me.
But what's the threat of the image of the tank? Why is that? Why do you present that as a threat or some kind of undermining of what I'm saying?
No, because you're saying, listen, the context. I live in a feminist context, and I don't think religion is so powerful in forming the roles in my house. What I'm saying is, tradition and religion do have an effect, and everybody around me is actually trying to make their path between what I said, being a feminist, understanding that women and men are not different. They are different. I wanted to say something about my fatherhood, but they should supposed to do equal, roles in the family. But at the same time, people don't want to disconnect from community, society. They come to their parents, religious parents, and everything changes suddenly. So you understand? I mean, I disagree. Yeah.
I understand. I mean, I think the two images that you frame of your wife's Bedouin colleague about trading the fine line, I think is specifically relevant here. That we are all trading the fine line, or at least I feel like I certainly am. And the other thing that you said was about the tradition move slowly. Like there is something about between those two places. There's something about permitting the wisdom of the generations to also seep in. I feel like an old man when I say I'm 43, you're 53. Now everyone's outed their ages on this podcast. But one of my great frustrations of the next generation coming up is the total abandonment of tradition. Like, what does Judaism represent? It represents of holding a wisdom tradition and holding by it. And in order to change anything, you have to have a really well thought out stance, a really well thought out approach. So the well thought out approach in our generation, at least in the community that I grew up in, is the role of women in synagogue. How can you have with good conscience a synagogue community where a woman never stands up and offers drasha from the Torah, never stands up and says what she thinks about the Torah portion, for example? That feels really crucial, but that doesn't feel like a knee-jerk reaction to something that we see in our current presence. That feels like a well thought out position. That feels like something which I know across many generations, maybe not many generations, but certainly many decades of the modern era, that women have as much academic capacity, and in some cases more, than me, and have much capacity in the words of Torah, and in many cases more than me. So it's important for me, for the progression and development of Torah in itself, to hear those voices. But the interesting part about parenting is, how do you both provide strong home where men and women can share roles in a thought out way, and also permit for some of the tradition of the generations to seep in and to have strong male presence in the house, which is so crucial for the raising of our kids, and also permit women to provide some of what we've described, some of that softer, more gentle, more nurturing, perhaps energy that maybe is intrinsic to what it is to bring feminine energy to the home. But it's a complicated path. It's a fine path, walking between the aspects of the tradition and traditional life, and permitting aspects of modernity and progress to seep in. Here, I want to take us also to a little bit, like we always try and do, like the deepening. Like, what does it mean for you today of being a dad, of continuing to nurture both children in their 20s and also younger kids? Tell me.
I will in a minute. I just want to comment about.
You always have to have the last
I
word.
won't let you, Oliver. Just as a secular, I mean, you're talking from a very religious perspective. As a secular, I have to admit, I do find it problematic, this change for religion, because the myths themselves are very patriarchal, and they do affect. And you remember the comment of Paulus about the fact that he understands from the fact that Genesis says that Eve was actually created from the rib of Adam. So he has a very normative conclusion, and a social conclusion from it, saying that he infers from the myth that women are secondary to men in every aspect of life, and a woman has to be silent. She has to, commit herself. So I'm saying it's much more complicated, even I think, than the fact what you said about my
Okay.
fatherhood.
No. Wait.
Yeah.
So you're you're quoting New Testament. You're quoting Paul.
Right.
Yes. So
Right.
what does tell the listener why talking about New Testament literature also speaks to Jewish life here as an academic?
Oh, I mean, if Paul was interested in the Old Testament and he read the Old Testament in a very specific way, and what I said before is the rabbis did the same in a way. So, I mean, I brought Paul in order to say it's not only a religious thing to prioritize men over women. It's also embedded in the stories, in the myth that religion actually offers us, the myth to understand the world around us. So, I mean, the challenge in a traditional environment, as I live in, is very, very big. We're talking about just a few days ago, these women who are Talmidot Chachamim Gdolot, these women who study Torah, and the High Court in Israel actually ordered the rabbinate to accept them to the exams that actually, says that they know the topic, the exams that the rabbinate is doing for men. And what they did is actually humiliate them. They let him wait. And when they actually wrote the paper, there was intrusions and everything. I can see it every day in Israel that there is a very big tension between what was in the past, in the present, and what we think will be in the future. On the one hand, I said women here are, very egalitarian. The environment is very egalitarian, very open. On the other hand, at the same time, very traditional, very patriarchal. So it's not a very easy, environment to be a father in, if we're talking about fatherhood.
But
an involved father, yeah.
No, but the context is the reason why this is a cause celeb for the right wing orthodoxy for parts of very religious Jewish life. The example that you give is there's a rabbinut exam, a rabbi exam, which is a standardized exam across almost all rabbis in Israel, which is controlled by the rabbinut, the rabbinical association that controls much of religious life in Israel. And the High Court has ruled that women should be able to sit these exams. And you're describing that they went to the exams and they were disrupted. But the reason why the ultra-Orthodox right is obsessing about the role of women in Jewish life is because it is the frontier line of the division between right-wing Orthodoxy and moderate Orthodoxy. And that's good. It's tremendously complicated in lots of frontiers inside Israel, but the focus is correct. And I believe in a pluralist Judaism where the ultra-Orthodox will be able to do their ultra-Orthodox things and have their Jewish life protected. They need to, in my mind, they need to serve the community in the way that everybody serves the community, including serve the army, which I know you would agree with. But the challenge is correct. And ultimately, I believe that Judaism can evolve. We could have a state of Israel and zoom out to the rest of the Jewish world where I don't need you, Yair, to go to an egalitarian shul where everybody can do everything. I don't need you to go to a shul where women can offer sermons or teach men and women. But I need you to respect kind of the rule of law and some kind of status quo where each person is allowed to do as they wish. And ultimately, I agree with you that in the tradition, that, the second creation story, there are two creation stories if you read carefully. The second creation story says, Minatzela, from the woman comes from man's rib. But you can read, we have an intelligent tradition which can read that in lots of different ways. You can read the story as has been done in tradition, that women come secondary to men. But you can also read it in a reflection of, in the first story, Du Partzuf, we were two creatures that were separated. One face that was divided into two. That is the first creation story. And the second story is one which is more complex, about reliance, about that we, in some way or other, come from one another. There are ways to read the stories in more egalitarian ways. So both can be true. In the Jewish tradition, both can be true. So you can have a patriarchal tradition, and we can rely on that for certain aspects of the tradition that we follow. And that has merit. At the same time, we can also have parts of the story which permit for this progress forward. And if of one generation, two generations, we're still desiring of this more egalitarian spirit inside of our tradition, that means it's real. We don't need to rush forward to those parts. But having Reb Tamara Led Applebaum on the podcast last week makes sense. She's an incredibly wise and inspiring role model inside our Jewish community. And I want her to be there alongside many other Torah teachers who are women. So if it makes sense, and if
you already sound apologetic. You already sounded apologetic.
I'm not apologetic. I need for the Torah tradition to also be affected. It's not there's a two-way street. We are affected by Torah, and Torah is affected by us. That is the midrash of interrelationship between the heavens and the earth.
Now you are being you're trying to convert me, I feel. So, but I'm just saying,
Preach.
with you. I'm just saying, as a secular, if I were religious, I would take your path. I would try to reinterpret tradition, of course. By the way, I don't like rewriting the myth. I don't like this path. I do like the reinterpretation of mythical stories, and sometimes saying, listen, the mythical story was created in a different environment. That's also okay. But what I'm trying to say to you, Oliver, is listen, in the last few years, I understood something very deep about Israel, that I live in a very traditional place. It's not only the right ultra-Orthodox or the orthodoxy in Israel. It's not only. We're talking about a huge amount of people who are actually traditional in a very deep way. Also with regard to the roles of women and men inside the house. Can I say something about fatherhood?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sorry. We got to it eventually. But I think something happened to me in the last 10, 15 years. I mean, I started to feel that the way I actually am with the kids is original. There is something original about it's not connected to my mom in a way. I mean, my mom was viewed suddenly as the relationship that is always trying to deal with the separation that happened during the birth. I mean, my mom can't really disconnect from her children. It's in a way I understood when I got older that it's my job to say, listen, I have to individuate myself because she can't do it. She gave birth to me. So her whole life is actually, in a way, I feel, a way of trying to close the gap between us that was, occurred in birth. What I'm saying with regard to my kids, I feel that it's a journey to meet them. I mean, we get closer and closer every day. They came into the world separated from me. I'm a man. I didn't give birth to them, and we're getting closer and closer every day. In that sense, I think, if you're talking about what fatherhood for me is, it's kind of being a therapist. Because I think only with fatherhood you can actually be or allow transference with a relationship between father and kids. I mean, the kids are coming home and they actually project and treat me as someone very meaningful in their lives, in a way, as if I'm the therapist. And I think that my position, the separation I have from them, and the fact that I want to get closer allows me, I can be a better transferer for them, better to take the projections in a lighter way than women and mothers, in a way. They have a different, I think, love, trust is a very important thing at their side. But if you're talking about transference, I think that's my job when I think about it, to actually allow it, do it. Oliver.
So listen, I'm newer in the journey. I've been a dad just for 6 years. No, I relate to what you say. I think part of being a parent is permitting for my less good behavior. I think you say good enough parent is the terminology in here that we talk about. To be the good enough parent. Like, when I'm tired or sometimes I'm working in the evening after I do bedtime, I'm not a good dad, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. The sweet moments are moments where I'm building a relationship, where I'm in the park with one of our kids, just the two of us, or we have like a cup of tea together or a hot chocolate together, or go for a walk, just one and another. Like those moments of closeness are really crucial. But I also think we one of the texts that you presented, we talk about in the Tosefta, we talk about like what are the skills that we teach. I'm not so down on getting my kids to do violin and ballet and swimming and all these different things, but there is a responsibility for also for teaching. And the way that I like to teach is by example. So the things that I'm able to do for them, I think, is to teach our kids some of the basics of Jewish life. Kiddush, saying the prayer for wine on Friday night. One of the first things that our kids always learnt was waving their hands in front of the candles for bringing in Shabbat. A lot of what I give to our kids is in the garden, that they learn how to plant stuff and how to grow seeds and these very small things, but like in a conscious way, these skills that we are transferring them, I think hold them instead, not just because I need them to know how to light candles or say the prayer for wine, but for me, it's also about like what's behind these actions, the aspect of them learning to be still for a bit and to create family time that's intimate and quiet inside our house. Or whether it's, the example of growing stuff in the garden is also about quiet and stillness and permitting to put something into the soil and wait for a week or a month or sometimes even 6 months for that to grow. These are important like life skills about fostering patience, creativity and patience. So that's part of what I think being a dad is for me. I think we need to start wrapping up. Yair, share us a final word, please. It's been a good conversation.
It is. I feel that what you said about learning by example is even wider for me as a father. I feel that even as the years go by, it's even more important than anything. Just the kids watch you every minute. They understand your thoughts, the way you act, you feel. And little things like I would try in all my heart to commit to my promises, to actually fulfill my promises to the kids. When I promise something, I mean, it's a little thing, but you would never find me just saying something and then backing from it if there's no good reason, right? So, I mean, learning by example, I think it's a very big part of my fatherhood as well. Thank you for that, yeah. Oliver.
No, I think the kids definitely watch me. There's a moment like a couple of months ago where our oldest said to me, "Daddy puts his hands in his trousers like this," and she kind of did like she imitated it. She imitated it where she put her thumbs in her pocket and her four fingers held out of the trousers. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I put my
They're
thumbs in my
watching you.
I put my thumbs
Watching
in.
you.
I put my thumbs in my trousers. And I was like, okay. And then a week later, a couple of days later, I'm like sitting there with my two thumbs in my trouser pocket. I'm like, I do that. Listen, the point is about physical presence for me. Like we know, as we all do, like lots of families that sadly are broken up in different ways, and God forbid people pass away, or when relationships come to an end, the continuity and presence and physical presence that dads offer are really crucial to families, and in the ways that we can, and we're not in control of everything. There's something about being present in a loving and a caring and a strong way, which I think above the clatter and our disagreement, there's a crucial part about presence in the household that our kids definitely look to and listen to, and it's been an insightful conversation just
right.
in terms of
I think you're
in that
right.
respect. Listen, we're going to finish here. I'll finish with some thank yous. Thanks, Yair, for being here today. Thanks for those who are listening. This is our Really Jewish podcast. We're excited to be here and carry on this project. We're exploring a slightly new format with a guest every other week, and me and Yair having a conversation about a topic which is really Jewish in the interim week. So join us next week, where we welcome Rabbi Joel Levy from Bet Futzberg in Jerusalem, one of my teachers, who's going to join us on the podcast. Looking forward to welcoming him. I'll take the opportunity to thank Oy Vavoy for our musical intro and outro. Listen to their single Back to My Roots, which is available on streaming platforms. They're a cool band to check in with. If you want to support us on Really Jewish, share this podcast with friends or a clip that you've listened to on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. Like us and give us 5 stars on the podcast. And we are collecting and looking for our first Patreon supporters to support this podcast with a small monthly donation. If you are able, join us next week on Thursday for a launch of our next episode of Really Jewish with Yair Eldan and Oliver Joseph.